Hello, I'm Jay Schwab here. Um, my video is going to be on the social revolution, how America was founded in the pubs. That's a bit of a tongue-in-cheek title, but it's largely true, at least as a kind of a companion piece to the revolution in terms of information and communication. Post-intolerable acts crisis period, uh, a point that's been largely overlooked is the means of trading information between the colonies and over short distances as well, or at least they were short distances back then, or they are now. In a time where even a trip of 10 to 20 miles was a day's activity, and that would be some kind of day's activity, the meeting houses, hotels, and especially the pubs and taverns became kind of information hubs of colonial America. Think of Facebook, I guess, in a way, only much slower. Um, where this helps, is, especially in warfare, is information and communication is important. Even in pre-warfare, where you're trying to get people on your side and you're trying to move information in between colonies, especially, this is very important. Where the fastest mode of travel would have been the wagonless horse, just a man on horseback. Um, these uh, multi-purpose tools, these pubs or whatever you want to call it, were sometimes restaurants, hotels, taverns, owners' residence, place to mail and receive letters and packages. And you could get food in these places. Sometimes it would just be boiling something out back in these stage stops and mercantiles and stuff like that. But they were all very important. Um, there are a few sources that I'd like to talk about here. The first one is the writers are Susanna Burroughs and Robin Room. The book is called Drinking, Behavior, and Belief in Modern History. I didn't like this one in the research near as much as the next two that I'm going to talk to you about. They tended to boil everything down into the psychological. Um, they did, however, talk about the exchange of information, but in only so much as people were essentially going into the taverns and places to escape what was happening in their world, which would have been, horrendous, but it was not a psychological aspect of it. I mean, it was, but I don't think it was the only aspect. Where they did a lot better with it was Kim Rice's book. Actually, it was a journal article, Early American Taverns for the Enlightenment of Friends and Strangers. Now, I have to admit, I was drawn by the title at first, but it wound up being a very good book. It's from the American Literature 14 from 1983, pages 46 to 54. So it's an easy read. Where I really liked it, while they did study the psychological aspects of it all, they talked a lot about the different nationalities coming from Europe, and so the Americas were becoming less English, and they're becoming more of other, nations, and so the hatred could build within England because of this. I found another resource, a bit of historiography from this book, Alice Earle's book, which was Stagecoach and Tavern Days. Now, the thing about this book is, and the historiography done is fine, and was my favorite of the books, of these three anyway. I studied many other books as well, and you'll see them in my bibliography, but this went from the early 1600s. Her book was written on from the early 1600s, and even went before that, finding the origins of the trails and roads that the colonials were using back to the Indian days. And so you have that, the whole historiography, and it goes all the way through the train period. But for us, we're going to mainly discuss what was going on in the taverns. This gave us a real human side of what was going on, dating and dancing. Now, in some cases, dancing was banned in a certain area, but the dating would have been done through courting and would have been watched very closely by the family. The most humorous aspect of these rural taverns was the humor aspects. No, it wasn't comedy night from wherever, Pennsylvania. It was what they would do is they pick a person in the that was in the bar at the time, in the tavern at the time, and they would pick on that person, practical jokes constantly. And it seems as though the total reason for this is to get into a fight. He would be totally picked on and would eventually turn, and a fight would ensue. And I thought that was very funny in terms of, I mean, why why would somebody do that? Such a fun night, and then to end it in fisticuffs. The Prescott family was very important. I picked Groton, Massachusetts, as a spot. It wasn't too close to Boston to be a Boston suburb, be in the Boston area. So it was enough rural and enough city that you can kind of tell. There were 7 bars and inns. There were tavern and innkeeper licenses. They're basically today's liquor license of Groton, Massachusetts. I picked them because of the Prescott family. General Prescott was one of the famous people from the Prescott family. He's the general that was given way to by Dr. Joseph Warren, which wound up leading to his death at Bunker Hill. Joseph Warren didn't have a military background. He was a doctor. And he felt that it was, above him to lead troops into battle at Bunker Hill. And like I said, it wound up leading to his death. But these tavern innkeeper licenses, it shows you what a small town could have in them, in terms of places where you could get alcohol, and to have these meeting places where great things from the Revolution were to begin. And speaking of that, when I started this research, I was thinking in terms of Boston. Boston was all I was thinking of. I was thinking about the Boston taverns, the Boston meeting houses, the places on the Freedom Trail, places that these great Americans in New England would have visited and had meetings in and plotted their course. And what wound up happening in places like the Red Dragon Inn, which was a Red Dragon Tavern, which was a tavern which is still around today, you would have the descent happen. People would get inebriated, and they'd go out in the streets. And in the case of the Boston Massacre, what happened was these people who were drunk would get out there and cause some trouble. They were watched over by the Sons of Liberty, but sometimes they couldn't control them. On the particular night of the Boston Massacre, it was everything happening at the same time. All these people pouring out of all these bars and meeting houses, mixing in with people who were out looking where the fire was because all the church bells were going off. And then other looky-loos. And of course, a scared regular army, with all these people around them. You can understand how this would happen. So basically what you have is you can spread, they can come out, and then you can announce whatever you have in these same meeting halls and taverns. This happened, like for instance, The Argument. It's an illegal pamphlet distributed at places like the Green Dragon Tavern. It was distributed by Publicus, and you'll see him quite a bit. He would have been many people. Joseph Warren, even down in New York, Alexander Hamilton wrote as Publicus as well. So you would have these things happen, and what would happen is, so you have the Boston Massacre, and then you can talk about it like Publicus wrote a short narrative of the horrid massacre in Boston. The most interesting thing about this was, and Publicus was probably Joseph Warren in this case, the most interesting thing for this case and the meeting at Faneuil Hall as well, which was presided over by Dr. Joseph Warren and Samuel Pemberton in 1770, right after the Boston Massacre. It was presided over by William Cooper, who was the town clerk of Boston. And so it's all an air of kind of an officiality with the city of Boston being involved. You have and then you have Dr. Joseph Warren giving the memorial at the Old North Meeting Hall. Um, Dr. Joseph Warren gave that oration at the 2 year anniversary. I also found the letters from uh, John Hancock and Samuel Adams thanking Dr. Joseph Warren for doing the oratory. And then also after Bunker Hill, um, Dr. Joseph Warren was eulogized at the Old North Meeting Hall as well. All very important places. And you can kind of see a circular motion of these things happening at these important places, dealing mostly around the Sons of Liberty and the Boston area. Philadelphia wasn't to be completely ignored, though. Um, the Pennsylvania Gazette and Benjamin Franklin's drinking dictionary spoke quite well of the alehouses and the Philadelphia Active Assembly at the alehouse, which is very important for Philadelphia. I do want to close this on, love, actually. This sounds kind of funny, but I think it's the one thing that transcends the time and history. Um, and I've found, you've heard that the saying that um, the past is a foreign place, is a foreign country. And these letters between John Adams and Abigail Adams is the one connection that we really have to the past. You know, we can kind of analyze it and everything, but these letters, you have John Adams who's telling of the days and what the happenings that's happening, and Abigail Adams is fine. You know, she misses her husband and he misses her. But where he became very melancholy is with things that happen at the house that he's missing. One thing that sent him into a special melancholy was apple pan dowdy, which is essentially a kind of a half apple pie, half peach cobbler, is how it was described to me. People in New England still make something that's called apple pan dowdy, but it's not what Abigail Adams made. And I find it interesting. You know, you can't really identify with history. You can just study it and use the primary sources, all of them. Again, a running theme for me throughout all the videos. But love is actually the one thing that's similar. It may be practiced a different way, but love is the same, whether it's the past or the now. And that's something to think about when you're doing history. Thank you.